The Vortex Empire stretched across 47 star systems like a hungry giant reaching out for more. Their military might had crushed rebellions on 100 worlds. Their fleets darkened the space between stars. Every species in the galaxy knew their black and silver warships, and every species learned to fear them. But even giants have nightmares. In the war room of the Imperial capital, Supreme Commander Thrazix stared at the holographic display. Numbers glowed in the air before him. Terrible, impossible numbers. His 6 arms trembled slightly as he reached out to touch the projection. 3 million ships, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. The humans are building 3 million warships. The other commanders shifted nervously. General Kraxenol, veteran of 50 campaigns, cleared his throat. Supreme Commander, our sources confirm this intelligence. The humans have been working on this fleet for years. They call it Project Deluge. Thrazix closed his 4 eyes. 3 million ships. The Empire's entire military consisted of barely 1 million vessels spread across nearly 50 star systems. How could a single species on one small world build such a fleet? They are insects, he growled. How do insects build such numbers? Admiral Vextar stepped forward, her scaled skin gleaming under the harsh lights. Their industrial capacity surpasses our estimates, Supreme Commander. They have automated everything. Their factories work day and night. Their entire species is focused on this one goal. War with us, Thrazix finished grimly. The room fell, silent. Outside the reinforced windows, the twin suns of their capital world created long shadows across the floor. Somewhere in the distance, 1 million warriors drilled for battles to come. We must prepare for the Great Stand, Thrazix declared. Pull back 80% of our fleets from the outer systems. Concentrate everything around our core worlds. If the humans want war, they will find us ready. Emperor Kraxthor himself had decreed it yesterday in front of the assembled nobility. The huge reptilian form had risen from his throne of bones, his voice booming through the great hall. Let them come with their 3 million ships, the Emperor had roared. We will show them the meaning of eternal war. Our ancestors conquered this galaxy. We will not be the generation that loses it. Now, as Thrazix looked at the tactical display, he saw the changes already beginning. Red icons showed fleets moving inward, abandoning positions they had held for centuries. Blue icons marked defensive platforms being constructed at incredible speed around their most vital worlds. General Kraxenol, he said, I want graviton shields around every inhabited world in the inner sphere. Triple our weapon batteries. Mobilize the planetary defense forces. The general saluted sharply. At once, Supreme Commander. What of the conquered species? Some of them might consider rebellion if they see our forces withdrawing. Thrazix waved a dismissive arm. Let them try. After we crush the humans, we'll deal with any uprisings. Right now, every ship we have must be positioned for the coming invasion. Across the Empire, the changes were already causing panic. On Nexus Station, civilians watched in terror as entire battle groups departed, leaving behind only skeleton crews. On the frontier worlds, governors received orders to evacuate all non-essential personnel. The great military machine of the Vortex Empire was reshaping itself, preparing for the largest battle in galactic history. In deep space, monitoring stations picked up increased activity from human space. Ships were moving, that much was certain. Large constructions were detected on human worlds. Energy signatures suggested massive industrial operations. Everything confirmed what their spies had reported. Humanity was preparing for total war. Meanwhile, in a small briefing room on Earth, Captain John Hayes sat across from General Lisa Brooks. The room was quiet except for the hum of climate control. A single folder lay between them on the plain metal table. One ship, Hayes said, looking at the folder. You want me to take one ship into the heart of their empire? Brooks nodded slowly. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her expression serious. The USS Defiance is our most advanced stealth vessel. While they prepare for a fleet that doesn't exist, you'll slip through their defenses. They really believe we have 3 million ships? Our intelligence confirms it. Their entire strategy is based on that assumption. They're pulling back from the frontier, concentrating everything around their core worlds. Hayes opened the folder, and studied the mission parameters. Crew of 47, supplies for 6 months, enough firepower to damage key targets but not enough for sustained combat. Sir, if they have millions of ships protecting their core systems, they'll be so focused on watching the main approaches that they won't notice a single ship slipping through the gaps they're creating by repositioning their fleets. Brooks stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the Earth's sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Captain, we've spent 2 years making them believe we're building a massive invasion force. Our deception operations have been perfect. They're so convinced of our numbers that they're making exactly the mistakes we hoped they would. She turned back to face him. One ship, Captain Hayes. One ship with the right mission, at the right time. That's all we need to bring down an empire. Hayes closed the folder and stood up. When do we launch? Tomorrow at 0400. The Defiance is already prepared. Your crew has been briefed and they're ready. As Hayes walked to the door, Brooks called after him. Captain? He turned back. Yes, General? Come home safe. And remember, you're not going to fight their entire fleet. You're going to let their own fear destroy them. Hayes nodded and stepped into the corridor. Tomorrow, while the Vortex Empire prepared for an invasion of millions, one human ship would begin a journey that would shake the foundation of galactic power. In the depths of space, the greatest deception in military history was about to unfold. The USS Defiance moved through empty space like a ghost. Captain Hayes sat in the commander's chair, watching the star charts on his main display. For 3 days they had traveled through what should have been heavily patrolled vortex space, but the expected enemy patrols never appeared. Still nothing on scanners, Captain. Lieutenant Paul Davis reported from his station. We should have encountered at least 2 border patrol groups by now. Hayes frowned. Are our stealth systems working properly? All green across the board. But sir, I'm picking up massive fleet movements deeper in their territory. It looks like they're pulling back from the frontier entirely. The captain stood and walked to the navigation console where Lieutenant Linda Green was plotting their course. Show me what you're seeing, Davis. The main screen shifted to a tactical display. Red arrows showed enormous fleet movements, not toward human space as they'd expected, but toward the interior of the Empire. My God, whispered Commander Steve Miller from the tactical station. They're abandoning their outer defenses completely. Engineer Amy Turner looked up from her console. Captain, I'm reading massive power signatures from their core systems. They're building something big, really big. Hayes turned to Dr. Ruth Adams, their science officer. Analysis? Adams pushed her glasses up and consulted her readings. Based on the energy patterns, it looks like they're constructing defensive installations on a massive scale. Graviton shields, weapon platforms, the works. It's like they're preparing for a siege. Communications Officer Greg Thompson raised his hand from his station. Sir, I've been monitoring their military channels. They're not trying very hard to encrypt them. It's almost like they want everyone to hear. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled with alien voices speaking in translated standard. Evacuation of Sector 7 complete. All civilian populations moved to inner worlds. Emperor demands all available warships report to Core Defense Position Alpha. The, human invasion fleet approaches. All units maintain vigilance. Hayes and his crew exchanged looks. Chief Officer Ben Collins shook his head in amazement. They're talking about our invasion fleet like it's real. Because to them, it is real, Hayes replied. Keep listening. More transmissions poured in. Astrology Division confirms the human fleet numbers exceed 3 million vessels. Defense Grid 7 activated. All weapon systems online. Supreme Commander Thrazix announces the Great Stand begins now. Turner suddenly looked excited. Captain, I'm seeing something incredible. They're creating gaps in their defensive network by concentrating everything around their core worlds. Huge gaps. Green plotted the information on her navigation display. She's right, sir. Look at this. They've pulled so many ships inward that entire sectors are completely undefended. Davis expanded the tactical view. Not just undefended, sir. They've also shut down most of their deep space monitoring stations. They're only watching the main hyperspace lanes that would bring a large fleet. Hayes studied the display, thinking hard. They're so focused on stopping an invasion force of millions that they've made their empire vulnerable to exactly what we're doing. Communications Officer Thompson held up his hand again. Sir, more traffic. This one's interesting. Nexus. Station reports all military assets departed as ordered. Station defense reduced to minimum crew. Industrial Complex Alpha 7 confirms skeleton staff only. All production focused on core world defense. Supply Depot Gamma requests emergency food shipments for evacuated civilians. Medical. Officer Claire Mitchell looked concerned. They're creating a humanitarian crisis with these mass evacuations. Not our problem right now, Hayes said firmly. Navigation. Plot us a course through these gaps they're creating. Tactical. I want full scans of every undefended facility we pass. Miller grinned. Aye, Captain. It's like they're inviting us in. Over the next 2 days, the Defiance moved deeper into Vortex territory. What they found surprised everyone. Massive. Military installations stood empty. Industrial facilities operated with minimal staff. Even the feared Nexus Station, hub of Vortex military power in this sector, had only a handful of old cargo ships docked. Political Officer Janet Brown worked with Turner to create a map of the Empire's current defensive positions. Captain, this is fascinating. By our estimates, they've concentrated over 80% of their military strength around just 7 core worlds. Leaving everything else essentially undefended, Hayes finished. Davis intercepted another communication that made the bridge go quiet. Citizens of the Empire, hear your Emperor. The human menace approaches with unprecedented numbers. But fear not. Our warriors stand ready at the Great Wall. Let the invaders come with their millions. They will break upon our defenses like waves upon stone. Hayes almost laughed. They're so convinced that we're bringing everything we have. They've arranged their entire empire as a perfect target. Green traced her finger across the navigation display. Look at this pattern, Captain. By pulling back to defend their core worlds, they've created corridors that lead us directly to their most valuable assets. Turner brought up her engineering analysis. Not just that, sir. These industrial facilities they've abandoned, they're still operational. Automated systems keeping everything running. With skeleton crews, they're incredibly vulnerable. Miller drummed his fingers on his console thoughtfully. We could take out critical infrastructure without even engaging their main forces. Hit their supply lines, their industrial base, their communication networks. Davis suddenly stiffened at his station. Captain, I'm picking up more fleet movement. They're shifting another battle group from the frontier to the core systems. How many ships? Approximately 12,000 vessels, sir. Combat formation, heavily armed. Hayes nodded, slowly. All part of the Great Stand. Thompson looked up from communications. Sir, the encrypted channels are getting more activity. They're coordinating something big. Let me hear it. All units report readiness for Operation Diamond Shield. When the human fleet arrives, no retreat, no surrender. The Emperor has spoken. Honor the Empire with your sacrifice. The bridge fell silent as the weight of what they were hearing sank in. The Vortex Empire was preparing for what they believed would be their final battle. Captain, Adams said, quietly, they're not just preparing for an invasion, they're preparing for a war of extinction. Hayes looked around his bridge at his small crew. Then we'll give them a war, but not the one they're expecting. Captain Hayes stood before his crew in the briefing room. The tactical display showed their current position deep inside Vortex territory. He could see the excitement in their eyes mixed with nervous energy. We've been dancing through empty space for 5 days, he began. Now it's time to start the main performance. Lieutenant Linda Green highlighted several targets on the map. These are the key installations the Empire has left basically unguarded. Communication relays, supply depots, and industrial facilities. All because they're expecting millions of us to show up at their front door, Chief Officer Ben Collins added with a slight smile. Hayes nodded. Exactly. While they're building the biggest defensive wall in galactic history, we're going to slip through their back door. Dr. Ruth Adams pulled up detailed scans of their first target. The main hyperspace communication hub at Delta 7. It coordinates all military communications for this sector, current defenses, 2 light cruisers and automated systems. Engineer. Amy Turner expanded the technical details. I've analyzed their automated defenses. They're impressive for stopping a large attack, but they have blind spots perfect for a single ship. And once we take out this hub? Asked Commander Steve Miller. Lieutenant Paul Davis answered, Chaos, sir. The sector goes dark. They lose coordination. Units start operating on old orders or making their own decisions. Hayes walked around the table, studying each display. Davis, what's our communication status? Clean sailing, sir. They're not even monitoring the frequencies we're using. They're too busy watching for mass fleet transmissions. Medical Officer Claire Mitchell raised a concern. Captain, what about civilian casualties? These facilities often have non-combatant workers. Hayes appreciated her concern. Good point, Doctor. We'll time our strikes for shift changes when skeleton crews are at their minimum. Our goal is disruption, not destruction of lives. Political Officer Janet Brown brought up intelligence reports. Captain, the Empire's military command structure is rigid. Without communication hubs, local commanders will freeze. They're trained to follow orders from above, not improvise. Navigation Officer Linda Green traced their planned route. If we hit these 7 targets in sequence, we'll create a communication blackout across the entire sector while remaining undetected. Hayes turned to Turner. Can the Defiance handle this level of operation? She's designed for it, sir. Quick. Strikes, fast jumps, minimal power signatures. We can stay invisible while causing maximum disruption. Communications Officer Greg Thompson added. And sir, I've been monitoring their encrypted channels. They're so focused on the non-existent invasion fleet that they're not even looking for single ship operations. Perfect. Hayes looked around the room. Questions? Miller raised his hand. What happens when they figure out it's just us? By then it'll be too late. We'll have knocked out enough of their infrastructure that they won't be able to coordinate a response. Davis brought up another point. The automated defense systems, sir. Even with skeleton crews, they pack a punch. Turner smiled confidently. Leave that to me. I've found the exploit in their command protocols. 1 electromagnetic pulse properly targeted, and their automated systems will reset to factory defaults. Meaning? Hayes asked. Meaning they'll spend more time trying to reboot than shooting at us? The captain made his decision. All right. People, we're go for operation. Green, set course for Delta 7. Turner, prep the systems for minimal detection. Davis, I want continuous monitoring of all channels. As the crew filed out, Hayes stopped Collins. What do you think, Ben? The chief officer considered. Honestly, sir, I think we're about to pull off something impossible. But then again, that's what we humans do, right? 3 hours later, the Defiance approached the Delta 7 communication hub. The massive structure hung in space like a metallic spider web, bristling with antenna arrays and communication equipment. 2 light cruisers, on patrol just as predicted, Miller reported from Tactical. They're following standard patrol patterns. No high alert status. Green maneuvered the ship into the structure's sensor shadow. We're in position, Captain. Turner's fingers danced across her console. Targeting the main control node, 1 electromagnetic pulse should cascade through their entire system. Do it. A beam of energy lanced out from the Defiance. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the communication hub began to flicker. Lights went out. Antenna arrays stopped their slow rotation. Direct hit, Turner reported. Their systems are rebooting. Estimate 12 minutes before they're operational again. The cruisers? Hayes asked. Miller checked his display. Confused, sir. They're trying to contact the hub. No response. Our window. Davis, anything on the comm channels? Dead air, sir. The blackout is holding. Hayes watched as the 2 cruisers began moving toward the hub, clearly confused by the sudden communication loss. Green, get us out of here. Jump on my mark. As they cleared the system, Thompson picked up new transmissions. Sir, surrounding stations are trying to raise Delta 7. No one knows what happened. Perfect. Navigation set course for Target 2. Turner, how long until the hull repairs we need? Already started, sir. We took minimal damage from their passive sensors. For the next 12 hours, the Defiance danced through vortex space like a ghost. Communication relay after communication relay went dark. Supply depot computers were infected with data corruption. Industrial facility control systems reset to maintenance mode. Each strike was surgical, precise, and completely unexpected. On the 7th target, things got more interesting. As the Defiance approached the industrial complex at Gamma Station, they found it already in chaos. "Captain," Davis reported, "they've figured out something's wrong, they just don't know what." Intercepted transmissions filled the bridge. "Gamma Station, are you receiving?" "Negative. Control is offline again. This is the 4th. Hub today, what's happening? Supreme Command demands answers." Hayes allowed himself a small smile. "They're starting to panic. Good. Continue the mission." As they completed their strike on Gamma Station, Brown made an observation. "Captain, look at their tactical deployments. They're not moving ships to investigate. They're pulling even more forces into defensive positions." "They still think the big invasion is coming," Collins realized. "Our attacks are just making them more convinced." Hayes nodded. "Then let's keep dancing. Navigation, plot course for the next sector. We've got an empire to confuse." The Nexus Prime shipyard was supposed to be the pride of the Vortex Empire. Stretching for kilometers in all directions, it could build 50 warships at once. Captain Hayes stared at it through the view screen, counting only 12 ships in various stages of construction. "Where is everyone?" Lieutenant Linda Green asked, echoing his thoughts. Lieutenant Paul Davis checked his scanners. "Minimal crew, sir. Maybe 2,000 workers total. A facility this size usually has 50,000. They've pulled almost everyone back to the core worlds," Dr. Ruth Adams explained. "According to intercepted communications, they're working around the clock to build defenses there instead." Engineer Amy Turner looked excited. "Captain, this is perfect. All those construction ships, the automated systems, the power distributors. If we take this yard offline, they lose their main source of reinforcements." Commander Steve Miller brought up tactical data. "Defenses are minimal. 2 obsolete battleships on patrol. Their weapon systems are outdated by at least 20 years. Hayes made up his mind quickly. "We hit it now. Turner, what's the most efficient way to cripple this place?" Turner highlighted several points on her display. "The main power distribution center. Take that out and the entire facility goes dark. Without power, their construction systems shut down, life support goes to emergency backup. And those 2 battleships will have to maneuver on thrusters alone. How many torpedoes?" "Just 12, sir. Precisely placed." Hayes nodded. "Do it." The Defiance moved silently through the asteroid field that partially concealed the shipyard. Turner had calculated the perfect angle of approach, using the construction, debris, and abandoned ships as cover. "Targeting solutions locked," Miller reported. 12 torpedoes programmed. Fire. The torpedoes streaked out in a carefully planned sequence. The first 3 hit the main power station. Explosions rippled through the structure as energy systems overloaded. The 4th through 7th torpedoes targeted secondary power nodes. The final 5 struck critical support systems throughout the facility. Within 90 seconds, Nexus Prime went from a bustling shipyard to a dark, crippled mess. "Both battleships are dead in space," Davis reported. "Power systems critical. They can't even raise shields." "Any distress calls?" Communications Officer Greg Thompson shook his head. "They're trying, sir, but with the power grid down, their long-range communications are offline." Medical Officer Claire Mitchell monitored life signs from the facility. "Emergency systems are keeping life support running. No immediate casualties." "Good." Hayes watched as the massive shipyard drifted helplessly. "Navigation, get us clear. Our work here is done." As they jumped away, Political Officer Janet Brown compiled the damage assessment. "Sir, that one strike probably set back their war production by 6 months." Captain Karen White, who had been observing quietly, stepped forward. "It's more than that. Watch how they respond." Over the next several hours, the crew monitored Vortex communications. The response was exactly what they hoped for and feared. Nexus Prime under attack. Massive human force. How many ships? We don't know. Power is out. We can't see anything. Supreme Command, possible advance force attacking shipyards. All defensive units, increase readiness. The invasion begins. Hayes shook his head in amazement. Even when we hit them hard, they still don't realize it's just us. Lieutenant Alex Turner, who had taken over tactical for this shift, brought up new data. Captain, look at their fleet movements. They're pulling more ships from border patrols. The tactical display showed red arrows converging on core worlds. The Empire was doubling down on their defensive strategy. Chief Officer Ben Collins whistled softly. They're practically inviting us in. Every time we hit something, they get more convinced the big invasion is coming. Sir, Davis interrupted, I'm picking up something interesting. The Empire's using backup communication networks. They're having to route all commands through longer channels because of our previous strikes. Turner smiled. Which means more time lag. Orders take longer to reach ships. Local commanders have to wait for instructions. Hayes saw an opportunity. How long would it take us to reach their secondary shipyard at Echo Station? Green checked her charts. 8 hours, sir. But according to our latest intel, they've moved most of its defense fleet to the core worlds. Let's pay them a visit. Turner, can we use the same strategy? With modifications, sir. Echo Station has newer systems, but they're still tied to centralized power. Hit the right spots and we get the same result. As the Defiance jumped toward Echo Station, they intercepted more vortex communications. All construction projects halted. Full defensive priority. Emperor demands immediate investigation of human advanced tactics. Possible stealth. Assault teams operating behind our lines. Maintain core world defenses at all costs. Thompson turned to Hayes. Sir, they're starting to realize it might not be their expected invasion, but they're still not guessing it's a single ship. Keep it that way. Tactical, prep for Echo Station assault. The pattern repeated. The Defiance approached undetected, identified critical systems, and struck with surgical precision. Echo Station's power grid failed. Construction bays went dark. Defense ships found themselves adrift. But this time something different happened. Captain, Miller reported urgently, I'm detecting a response force, 3 heavy cruisers jumping in. From where? Davis checked his readings. From the core defense zones, sir. They're actually pulling ships from their primary defensive positions to investigate. Hayes felt a surge of excitement. They're starting to panic. Turner, how long until our jump drive cycles? 30 seconds, sir. Miller tracked the incoming ships. 25 seconds until they reach effective weapon range. All hands brace for jump. The Defiance vanished just as the first enemy torpedoes reached their position. In the command center of the nearest vortex cruiser, alarms blared as sensors lost their target completely. Did we hit them? The alien captain demanded. Negative, sir. Target vanished, no debris. Impossible. No ship that small should have jump capability. Back on the Defiance, Hayes gathered his senior staff. The pattern was becoming clear. They had hit the Empire's industrial capacity hard. Communication networks were crumbling. Supply lines were disrupted. And most importantly, the Empire was so focused on the phantom invasion that they were making tactical errors. Sir, Brown said, studying intelligence reports, we're seeing the beginning of a cascade failure. Their rigid command structure can't adapt to these surgical strikes, Turner added. And every time they try to investigate, they weaken their core defenses. Hayes looked at his crew with growing confidence. Then let's keep the pressure on. Navigation, plot a course for their central supply depot. It's time to show the Empire what happens when you prepare for a war that isn't coming while ignoring the one that is. The bridge of the USS Defiance was tense with anticipation. For 3 weeks they had danced through the heart of the Vortex Empire. Now Captain Hayes was about to broadcast the truth that would shake the galaxy. Communications are ready, sir, Lieutenant Greg Thompson reported. Hayes stood before the communications console looking at his crew. They had done the impossible. Now came the final act. Open all channels. Empire military frequencies, civilian bands, everything. All channels open, Captain. Hayes took a deep breath and pressed the transmit button. This is Captain John Hayes, of the United Earth Starship Defiance. To the citizens and military forces of the Vortex Empire, hear me now. Across countless ships and stations, his voice echoed through communication systems. For weeks, your leaders have prepared for an invasion of millions. They have spoken of 3 million human warships approaching your worlds. They have withdrawn your fleets, abandoned your frontiers, and created fear throughout your empire. Lieutenant, Paul Davis watched the responses coming in. Enemy ships were frantically trying to trace the signal source. I am here to tell you the truth. Earth sent one ship, just one, the USS Defiance. 47 crew members. That's all. The silence that followed was deafening. Lieutenant Linda Green monitored energy signatures across vortex space. Ships were dropping out of jump, holding position, listening. For 3 weeks, this single ship has moved through your territory. We have disrupted your communications, crippled your shipyards, and exposed the weakness in your empire's structure, not through force but through your own fear. On the Imperial capital world, Supreme Commander Thrazix stared at his communication boards in horror. His 4 eyes darted between displays showing his scattered fleets, damaged infrastructure, and the single blinking dot that represented the human vessel. Your empire was not defeated by millions of ships, Hayes continued. It was defeated by the idea of millions of ships. While you massed your forces to fight an enemy that never existed, you left yourselves vulnerable to one that did. Emperor Kraxthor emerged from his throne room, his massive form trembling with rage and disbelief. Find that ship, he roared. All forces converge on its location, but the damage was already done. Throughout the Empire, conquered species who had been quiet for generations suddenly saw opportunity. On 50 worlds, rebellions sparked simultaneously. Species that had spent decades planning uprisings chose this moment of weakness. Chief Officer Ben Collins monitored the spreading chaos. Captain, we're seeing massive civilian uprisings. The subjugated species are taking advantage of fleet withdrawals. It's more than that, Political Officer Janet Brown added, watching her intelligence feeds. The core military structure is beginning to collapse. Commanders are refusing orders. They're arguing among themselves. Intercepted communications painted a picture of total confusion. Supreme Command, please clarify. How many human ships? Only one ship causes this damage? Withdraw from core systems and engage single target? Negative on withdrawal. Orders are to maintain defensive positions. But sir, our industrial base is destroyed. Rebels on 15 worlds and counting. Admiral Vextar, aboard the Empire's flagship, made a decision that would echo through history. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships under my command cease defensive operations. That's not an invasion force approaching. That's ghosts in our minds. One by one, fleet commanders across the Empire reached the same conclusion. The rigid military structure that had held the Empire together for centuries was fracturing. Hayes nodded to Thompson. Continue broadcasting. Your Supreme Commander Thrazix told you to expect an eternal war. But empires that rule through fear are always temporary. Today, you've learned what happens when that fear is turned against you. On the Imperial capital, Thrazix's war council had devolved into shouting matches. General Kraxenol pounded a table with his fists. One ship. We've ruined ourselves preparing for one ship. Emperor Kraxthor stood silently, watching his empire crumble on tactical displays. Rebellions were spreading. Ships were refusing orders. Conquered worlds were declaring independence. Captain Karen White monitored the broader strategic picture. Captain, their entire governmental structure is failing. 3 core worlds have already declared independence from Imperial rule. Dr. Ruth Adams observed the human psychological aspects. Fear multiplied by rigid military doctrine. They couldn't adapt because their entire system was built on following orders, not thinking independently. Hayes made his final broadcast statement. To the people of the galaxy, let this be a lesson. The greatest victories don't always come from strength in numbers. Sometimes they come from being exactly what the enemy isn't prepared for. He nodded to Thompson to close the channel. Navigation, set course for Earth. Our mission is complete. As the Defiance began its journey home, they watched the Vortex Empire's final collapse unfold. Ships that had been massed for defense were now scattered, trying to contain rebellions. Communication networks they had destroyed remained offline. Industrial capacity lay in ruins. Medical officer Claire Mitchell had treated exactly 14 crew members for minor injuries over the entire mission. Not a single life had been lost. "Sir," Lieutenant Alex Turner said from his station, "long-range sensors show 73 former Vortex worlds have declared independence in the last hour alone." Commander Steve Miller shook his head in amazement. An empire that lasted 800 years undone in 3 weeks by their own paranoia. As they cleared Vortex space, a final communication came through, a Vortex military frequency, but the speaker's tone was different. "USS Defiance, this is Admiral Vextar. On behalf of the dissolved Vortex Military Command, I offer our surrender. The Empire as you knew it no longer exists." Hayes took the communication. "Admiral, we never declared war. We never intended conquest. We came to show you that your greatest enemy was your own fear. We understand that now, Captain. Too late for the Empire, but perhaps not too late for us to learn." When the Defiance returned to Earth, they found no massive fleet waiting. But they did find General Lisa Brooks at the docking facility, a proud smile on her face. "Mission accomplished?" she asked as Hayes disembarked. "More than that, General. The Vortex Empire is gone. Dozens of new independent nations are emerging. The galaxy has changed." Brooks nodded slowly. "All because we made them afraid of something that never existed, while one small ship did what 3 million could never have accomplished." Hayes looked back at the Defiance, his crew filing out behind him. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to convince the enemy to defeat themselves. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. An empire that had prepared for millions was undone by one. The largest military force in the galaxy had been defeated by shadows and fear, while a single ship with 47 people had changed the course of galactic history. In years to come, military academies across the galaxy would study the Defiance mission. But the true lesson was simple. The most powerful weapon wasn't the largest fleet, but the enemy's own misconceptions.